Okay. Okay, look, I think we can make a start now, guys, and I want to thank everybody for participating. This is, yeah, it's a great response. And the topic today is something I'm very enthusiastic about, and because I've used it for many years and it's been very successful for me. It's one of the three fundamentals I use for tennis. And I think, you know, one of the interesting things about, you know, about this term fundamentals is that nobody can really put their finger on what are the tennis fundamentals. You hear it thrown around a lot. You could be at a court side and somebody is watching a match and saying that that player has, you know, great fundamentals. And likewise, you can hear the same comment at the side of a court saying that player has very poor fundamentals. But very few people actually know what fundamentals are or what they are, because there's no definite list of fundamentals. So what I'd like to do today is to perhaps, before I go into one of my fundamentals, is to briefly explain what exactly I term a fundamental. And a long time ago, I had someone say to me, made a comment, that a fundamental is something that cannot be taken out of tennis. Now, if we take that on board and as gospel, as truth, then let's imagine what is there that can't be taken out. Because if it can be taken out, then it's not a fundamental. For instance, as human beings, we need certain things to fundamentally stay alive. And yeah, I could list oxygen, nutrition, including food and water. Another one might be, let's see, what's another fundamental of, sleep. Now let's imagine those are the three fundamental things that keep us alive. Then they are fundamental to us staying alive. But someone may come up and say, well, you need the love of family and the family group and all that. But no, it can be taken out. If you get sent to prison or you get stranded on a desert island, you can survive for years without your family. You might come up with lots of other things. But if you can take that out, it's not a fundamental. So in terms of human survival, you have oxygen, you have nutrition, and you have sleep. If you take any one of those three things out, you won't live for very long. So the question we need to ask is, what are the tennis fundamentals? What can we actually survive without? Now, I hope all of you can see this full screen now. Let's see, sorry, I'm just going to make a few changes here. All right, so obviously the topic today is ground, and I want to try and convince you that ground is a fundamental. Now, why do I need to make this so important? Well, the reason is that I have the feeling that many coaches around the world coach in a format such as they have 1,000 tips and gimmicks that they bring to the court to help. Sorry, I've got some more people just coming in here at middle. Okay, so they have 1,000 gimmicks and tips that they use when they come to court. So given any lesson, they look at a player in terms of these 1,000 tips and gimmicks. And if you can imagine, those tips and gimmicks are the tools of your trade, your toolbox. It might surprise you that my toolbox, if you open it, has only 3 things. They lie at the bottom of my toolbox very neatly stacked together. And imagine, for instance, that you're trying to fix a car and you sort of know the problem and you go to your toolbox and you open the toolbox and there's 1,000 tools spread out inside the box. Which one do you select? There may be, maybe one tool does the job better, but is that the one you use today? When I have a player on court and I go to my toolbox, I only have 3. And that makes my mental organization much, much easier. So I'm sorry, I'm just trying to bring in some people here. So the whole point of having fundamentals as your cornerstone of coaching is that it clarifies both the analysis and the corrections you're going to come up with. So let's now analyze what are the tennis fundamentals and try and ascertain why they are so. When you look at a lot of sports, you look at, say, diverse sports such as throwing a javelin, football, cricket. What you'll notice is that a lot of sports have similarities in their fundamentals. And the reason for that is that we're basically trying to do much of the same thing. Just one second, I'm sorry about this. There's more coming in here. So that when you're dealing with, if you're dealing with sport, you're dealing with pretty much the same fundamentals. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment that a cricketer is running to field a ball coming close to the boundary in cricket. When they get that ball, before the ball gets to the boundary, the first thing they do when they field that ball is they spread their feet. And that is a subconscious effort, because from the boundary it's a long distance and they probably have to throw it fairly flat and hard. So they need power for that. And they instinctively spread their feet. And that's common in any endeavor we do where we require energy. If we were to push a car, we would never do it upright. We would spread our feet and probably get into a 45-degree angle with our body to push the car. And tennis is no different to that. So what we have to probably, we have to separate is the difference between what I call a technique and a fundamental. And a lot of us, in order to get this, clear this toolbox up, a lot of us will have to throw away some tools that we thought were fundamental to players' games. And some of them may surprise you. And if you'd like, during this discussion, if you'd like to discuss this in the chat, please start texting messages and we can deal with those later. But the first one you see here on the slide, is the backswing a fundamental? And I'm saying no, because there are certain shots when you don't have to use a backswing. Think of a volley. Think of a big serve coming into your body. Think of half volleys. And you may say to me, oh, but you're coming up with exceptions here. But the thing is, if it's a fundamental, there are no exceptions. And if there are exceptions, then they're not fundamentals, they're cosmetic. On the second one, maybe the most surprising of all, because I'm saying that footwork is not a fundamental. Now, I don't know if you've seen wheelchair tennis lately, but it is extraordinarily good. I was in England recently and I saw these top wheelchair players practicing, and I was awestruck. The speed and skill that they get around the court and play tennis is extraordinary. So if footwork was so important, and I'm not saying it's not an important aspect of tennis, but I'm saying it's not a fundamental. Because if it was a fundamental, how come wheelchair players can play so well? And the third one, the last one, is follow through a fundamental? Well, no, because often we don't require a follow through also. Again, on some returner serves, they're more of a block. On half volleys, we don't need to follow through. And on volleys, often we freeze the finish. We don't need the finish. So it's important for us as we start to discard some tools from our toolbox, to start looking to say, is this a fundamental in that can we do without it? Are there instances where we don't need it? And if there is, they're not fundamentals. So we come now to this fundamental that I have come up with, which is ground. And in all sports, you need ground. Think of instances where you're trying to, again, the cricket thrower from the boundary. Think of javelin throwers. You know, I often watch basketball on TV, and I saw Steph Curry from the, where is he from? The San Francisco Warriors. I saw him right on the buzzer throw a shot from behind his halfway, and it went in. Now, the remarkable thing was not that it went in. It was more that where did he get that power from? And often on three-pointers, you see the players do this little lift in their ankles through their feet and the wrist just guiding the ball. In a lot of these basketball three-pointers, the wrist is a guidance, it's a steering wheel. But the power comes out of the ground. And it's tremendous power because we don't actually see it. It comes through the body in a biomechanical way. And that's why we miss it so many times in our coaching. But it's there. And it supplies so much energy. Now, often in tennis coaching, we tend to beat around the bush and do what I would say would be secondary coaching. So instead of coaching ground, we say bend your knees. And bend your knees has two functions. You have this function of getting low to a low ball, but also it also supplies energy because when you begin to straighten your knees, you're interacting with ground and timing a ball and supplying power. That's what bent knees does. But often, just to show you the confusion players probably face, we often tell players to bend your knees, bend your knees, bend your knees. And there was a junior player here once in Bangkok who played junior tournaments, who was a chronic shanker of the ball, time balls often. So often that players would gather around to watch his matches. Now, I know for a fact that back at his coaching camp, he was repeatedly told to bend his knees. But the poor guy didn't straighten them either. So while he went to a ball with bent knees, without the extension, he wasn't gaining any of the timing that was required either. So I've got a quote here right at the bottom of this slide to do with timing. And I'll read that out because it's a bit of a mouthful, but it says pretty much everything. Timing involves the successful synchronization of energy into a ball at the optimum, so that optimum power is achieved. So power and timing come through the soles of your feet. And what I'd like to suggest to you is that every shot you hit in tennis starts with the interaction of the sole of your foot and the court. Any power you want to generate will be power through the sole of your tennis shoe and the interaction with the ground. and your timing, the correct synchronization of that interaction will produce the optimum power and timing of a shot. That's where timing comes from. So again, going through this whole timing and power thing, all sports use it, but few sports go to it as the source of the teaching. So we become quite loaded down with tools. We have, 20 things to teach timing of the ball when all we need is one. To create more power to the ball, we come up with things like racket head speed and take the ball early and all these things. And what I'd like to suggest that you begin to put these as secondary factors. Hold them back. Teach your player to utilize ground, and then watch to see what the problems or the issues they may have with improvising with ground, and then you can supply them with what I would call the cosmetics. So just to now, we're getting closer to this time when we will enter the court and try and maybe introduce ground. And I just want to give you, most ground in most sports is taken out of 1 foot only. If you think in terms of tennis and perhaps a wide forehand for a right-hander, then the power and the timing will come out of the open stance, the right foot. If you think of a short half-court ball and you come in on a closed stance, it'll probably come out of your left toe, your left foot. But nature seems to like to have ground come out of 1 foot rather than 2. A high jumper that comes in for the high jump and wants to clear the bar normally isolates into 1 foot at the end. In serving, although we can sometimes bring the back foot up, in most cases the serve is much more successful if the front foot is the one that we use the most. And I think one of the things that, if I can just, we will, at the end of this talk, we will send you a link to a YouTube video which shows ground and contact foot for multiple sports, but obviously mostly tennis. But I'll send that link soon after this talk, and you'll be able to look and see visually where we're going in terms of other sports. There was a famous football match many years ago, I think it was the European Cup, where Chelsea were in the final, I think, and John Terry had to take a penalty. And it's an infamous penalty because he missed it. And he missed it because on his run-up, as he planted his left foot before he kicked with his right, the left foot slipped. And that's his contact foot. And if that contact foot does not interact with the ground in a solid way, then the right foot has no power. And on this occasion, poor John Terry slipped with his right foot, and the ball sort of sputtered along to the goalie, and the goalie said, "Thank you very much." It's probably one of the low moments of John Terry's life. At any time your contact foot is not stable or slips, then you will have tremendous problems getting energy to your swing. So again, just to go over now, the contact foot can be either foot. Nature doesn't care which foot you use. It's like going back to an analogy of humans needing oxygen. If you come out of India and travel to, Britain, the oxygen's there, that'll help you survive. Nature doesn't care where you breathe the oxygen. It just wants you to breathe it. And the contact foot which supplies energy and timing for every shot. Nature doesn't care which foot you take it out of. It just asks for interaction. So often in teaching, again, we limit players by talking about, closed stance, taking balls on the rise and all that, which is all good. You need to have those skills. But far better to have players be far adaptable, front foot, back foot, open stance, closed stance. What else have we missed out a bit? Left foot, right foot, it doesn't really matter. Nature doesn't care. And then for the second caption at the bottom, lifting off the ground, be clear that when you see players lift off, that is ground. And that is what I term advanced ground. Not in the sense that don't teach beginners this, but in the sense that when you use ground a lot, you will naturally lift off. And players should be encouraged to do that. Here then are three key components, elements, that I would take to the court tomorrow, if you're allowed on the court, but I would take to the court as soon as you get back. That would help enhance timing. And sorry, apart from the video link I'll give you, which is more of a visual thing for ground, I'll send you this exact same PDF file. So it'll be there for reference. But the three key elements that you'll be able to work on when you go back to the court. The first one might seem simplistic, but the player needs to put their brain in their feet. And it might seem simplistic, but most players have their brain in their backswing, their follow through, all these things. Whereas what I like to do is, again, make it very simple. I'm teaching one of my three fundamentals. It's ground, get your brain in your feet, and isolate the brain and the feet. But more importantly, and it comes to the second point here, focus on your contact foot. So the contact foot, you'll organize whether it's back foot, front foot, open stance, closed stance, ball into the body, which foot are you using? And when you go to the third point, which is stay dynamic. So imagine now you're running to a ball, you're hoping the player will have their brain in their feet. They're going to do so and organize a contact foot. And as they hit the shot, they're going to basically stay dynamic in the ground so they can recover easier, more balanced, be ready for the next ball. So, in summary, I work with three fundamentals, but I have 1,000 gimmicks and tips. They just come secondary. But when I isolate into three fundamentals, when I get to the court or when I have a new player on court, and I am asked to analyze and then come up with solutions, for me, it's very easy because we have, I can go to one of three things and it's clear cut and it's not cluttered. So I have a clear brain about identifying, analyzing, and coming up with solutions. And I think early in my talk, I've tried to persuade you that that's a far better way to approach lessons and problems with players. I think now, as time is ticking through, I think we should perhaps deal with, Manjit, are you there or are you muted?
I can hear you. I'm there, sir.
Okay. Are there any questions that we can come up with that have come up in the chat?
Yes, sir. We have the first question. How can we teach ground on court?
Right. Okay. So, right. I think in those 3 points I mentioned, pretty much sum it up in that we're going to get the player now to, instead of focusing on backswings and follow throughs, we're going to get them to send their brain down to their feet, awareness in the feet. And the awareness is for the purpose of creating a contact foot. And the whole purpose of that is that we can time a ball, add power, and recover at the same time. All that occurs within the feet. So in terms of how we teach that, we're just going to, I mean, we stick at a theme and we keep on it and keep on it. There are lots of drills and things that I could show you, and I have, which I could show you. If you want to contact me, I can show you how to teach ground on the serve, on wide balls, balls to the bodies. I can show you drills I use on a daily basis. So guys, if you'd like to have those, put your comments in and I can get back to you with solutions to those.
All right. And the second question we got, Paul sir. What age should we start teaching ground?
Okay, so if we go back to the oxygen analogy, what age should we allow people to breathe? Obviously from the first minute they're born. So I teach ground because they are fundamental to having a player learn a solid system and to improve quickly and become the best they can become. Ground is in the first lesson. Why would we wait, for instance, till the player had played a year or two and we're busy teaching them stroke mechanics and cosmetic, how it looks, and why would we wait that long? If it's a fundamental, put it in on the first day. In fact, you know, one of my most precious lessons was my own daughter. The first lesson I taught her at 6 years old, the first time on court, was to be able to move and integrate with ground. Any
All
more
right.
there?
And yeah, the final question is, can we send you a video of our student of commenting on their ground? If
Right.
you can comment on their ground.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to do that. If you guys are going out on the court and you're trying to implement this stuff, I'm hoping that the video that we link you to and this PDF file will re-jog your memory but I know it's not going to happen overnight. I'm still learning every week, every month I'm on the court, learning how to do a better job teaching ground, how to identify problems with ground. I'm learning all the time. So it doesn't happen overnight. Anything good doesn't. But if you're out on court and you're having a few problems or you have a player and you need some issue identified, I'm happy to go back and forth. And perhaps you could send, my email link will be somewhere on this, and you can send your video to me and we can go back and forth on it together. That would be a lot of fun. I encourage that. So Manjeet, was there any other questions that came up, or was that it?
I think that's it. We have this now, and
Okay. All right.
we don't
Well,
have
look,
any more. Yeah.
guys, that's the topic. And again, we'll be sending out information on the talk. The full video will be linked into YouTube for a few days, and I'll send this PDF file which you can keep. And I'd just like to maybe give you a heads up. I will be doing another one very soon, and I'd really like you to join. And if you've got anything out of this, it'd be a pleasure to have you again. And I think, you know, what we'll do on our next one is get away from the technical side and go more to the mental side. And I just have to read this. I think what we'll do is we'll go to a topic, I would say, how to include mental training in every lesson. We know how important it is to the game, and especially for you guys coaching competitive players. But sometimes it's not an easy thing to put it into our daily lesson. So let's get together in a later date and we'll send you notification of it, and we'll go through this topic as well. So for now, thank you very much for your attendance, and I hope you got something out of it. And if there's any questions that come up, please just send them through. So thank you very much for your attendance.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, sir.